Welcome back to Navigating Performance Management, the podcast from the Appraised team. I'm Rowley Walter, founder of Appraised, an employee performance management platform. Throughout this series so far, I've been speaking with senior HR leaders from a range of companies on topics such as check-ins, feedback, and promotion and bonus. If you've missed any so far, do scroll back in the podcast app to find previous episodes. For today's conversation, we'll be joined by Katie Woods-Ruddick, who for the past 6 years has been Chief People Officer at PX Limited. Katie has over 20 years of experience working within HR, dealing with all aspects of the employee life cycle, specializing in learning and development. PX, for those who aren't sure, is a fully integrated infrastructure solutions business based in Stockton. PX operates several of the UK's key infrastructure sites and also recently announced the acquisition of Lifter H2, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which develops hydrogen infrastructure solutions for industry, which is a really interesting area in my view. Based on her experience, we're delighted to have you, Katie, join us to discuss how to build performance into people strategy. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Rowley, and thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Great. And did I say that correctly? Lifter H2?
I think so. I'm still learning. It's very new myself, but that's what I'm calling it.
Okay, fine. Well, we'll stick with that. But actually, we're here today to talk about performance management, and you've obviously got a wealth of experience. And I think one of the things that I'd really love to get from you today, that I know you can talk very persuasively and fluently about, is the whole spectrum of performance management as a strategic tool that offers great value to the business as a whole, and all the way down to what it means for individuals as well. So, I think that's one of the great things I would love to hear from you today, if that's all right. So I'll try and dig that out of you, because I know that you can talk about all of these topics. If we start off then, if we just talk about from the kind of strategic point of view, and I'd love you just to describe a little bit more about what performance management means for you at PX at a strategic level. What does it mean to the senior leadership team, and how do you see this as a strategic tool?
So essentially, we're a people business, like lots of organisations. Yeah. We rely on our people to deliver the service that allows us to safely operate the plants that we do so on behalf of our customers and of course on the asset that we own ourselves. And performance management is much more than checking people are doing their jobs. It's around how do we take the time to set meaningful objectives that are aligned to the overall strategy of the company, of what we're trying to achieve in any given financial year, and how does that translate into the actions that we're expecting of our employees. And that's really important to me, that people understand the connection, so that every person who's operating in whatever part of the business, on whatever activity that's within their job role, that they understand the contribution that they make to our overall success. And having the opportunity to sit with your line manager and discuss how you're doing on your performance, and hopefully it's that people are doing really well, and perhaps how we can talk about how they can do even better, is really important, and it motivates people. It makes them feel part of the wider organisation, and we want people to understand their the contribution is so valuable to us.
We're looking for a kind of win-win, aren't we? The employees feel that they're doing something worthwhile and productive, and that's contributing to driving the organisation as a whole forward. But obviously that benefits the board, the investors, who are trying to achieve things with the organisation as well. That's where the kind of strategic, joins with the individual.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one can't do without the other. We can sit and set a strategic objective, but then it relies on the people to be able to deliver, and whatever part they play. And that's one of the key things that's really important to me, is that everybody understands that their role makes a difference, everybody plays their part of the overall picture. And there's one thing setting the strategic direction and setting out where we'd like to be, but then we've got a whole heap of people who have to play their part in order to deliver that. And the performance management part comes into being able to set clear objectives for people that really do align right back up to the strategy piece.
That's right. Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit more. So how I imagine it works is you are, if you're director level, you would be thinking about the objectives for the organization based on the strategy for the next, I don't know, the next 12 months, or it could be a longer term. That process happens, and then presumably do things get cascaded down, or are people asked to contribute to those things? How does that work? And I'd love to know what value the directors see this give to this process of cascading the objectives to individuals.
Yeah, so we actually we did some internal communications on this last year, because it's really apparent of how important it is to people to feel like they're doing a good job. And sometimes it can get lost as to how the two things and come together, and it's really quite a simple process. Certainly in our organization, we talk about being agile, and we are. We're not an organization that has layers of complications, but quite simply, we have the overall board objectives that we have a set of metrics that we need to deliver at board level. From that, we use annual delivery plans. So we look at the board strategic that we've agreed and say, okay, what's the things we have to do in order to be able to deliver what we've described to the board. We then sit as a senior team and look at what we have to deliver. So that becomes our objectives, and that's transparent. We need people to know what we've set out to deliver, and we need to be measured as a senior team as to what people should expect from us. And then what you have from that annual delivery plan, which is put together at a senior level, it then goes down into business units. So it says, this is what we're looking to achieve in this area. What does that business unit need to do in order to help us deliver? And then from the business unit, it starts to cascade down into individuals. So, and that's what starts to form people's objectives, is what's the things that you're looking to achieve that help your business unit deliver on their annual delivery plan, which helps the senior team deliver on their annual delivery plan, which then feeds into the commitments that we've made to the board within that financial year. So there's a really clear line of sight as to how they all fit together.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. I'd love to know. Well, I think some of the people listening to this will be thinking about the orchestration of this process. You've got to start with the business plan at the top, and filter it down into ultimately actions taken by individuals. And I know of some organizations who struggle to get this done in a reasonable time frame, because they find out that they've already gone halfway through the year and they haven't actually done the whole process.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how you've tackled that. Obviously, I would hope that having a technical system helps with that process. But yeah, just wondering if you've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we're not perfect, because as you say, it's a challenge to get all of that together. But we do put in some strict deadlines on this, because it is important, as you absolutely say. You go from closing off one year, and then you start another year. So how the system helps us in terms of individuals is we close off people's annual performances at the end of March. We're then looking to start setting objectives for the next year. So in most of our business, we do have a part of our business that runs on a different time scale. But in most of our business, we close the financial year on the 31st. So that's the end of our measures, and then we go into the next year. So there is a tight time scale. But what we have with the system is it does help, because it means that, you know, people can start you know, thinking about what's important. People can start, you know, reflecting on where they were last year. People can start thinking about what they might want to achieve this year, and they can start inputting that into the system, ready for a conversation with the line manager. But we do, you know, there is a fine art on getting all of this information out and communicated, so that people can see that what they're setting really does connect with the bigger picture, because, as I said, you know, the two things have to come together.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I'd love to ask you a bit more about performance management and the process and the system and the data or insights that you might get out of this process as well, and that feeding that back into senior decision making. Is that one of the, you know, how would you describe the benefits that you've had from that process?
Yeah, so what it means is, you know, that whatever's put in, we can get out.
Yep.
And you know, the key things we're looking for are, you know, who's mentioned that they might want some career progression, and it doesn't have to be somebody's described exactly where they want to be. The way that we've set up the system is very free format. It's the opposite of prescription. So there's some key headers that we're interested in, but we allow people, you know, to have a range of things from, you know, I'd really like to do something else, but I'm not sure what that would be, to a very detailed path of this is where I'd like to be in the next 5 years. And that was one of the things that was really important, is because somebody might have an inkling that they want to do something, but they're not able to articulate it. And all we want is to start a conversation. But what the system allows us to do as a people team is it allows us to extract that data, and then we can check in and say, you know, across the business units to our managers is, you know, you had 5 people in your area that completed the career progression. You know, what's happening, what conversations are happening, you know, what does it look like for the individual, what opportunities might be there, and it can't always be, you know, by the end of the year we're going to promote them, because that's not always possible. But you know, it's looking and saying, can we, you know, find some project work somebody can work on? Can we find something different where somebody can expand their skills, and make sure that's happening? So the career progression area is really important, and also the development that feeds into that. So again, the system allows us to run the reports to say what development requests have been made, how do they fit into the business, how do they fit into the overall strategy as a result of that development. You know, what will the individual be able to contribute differently as a result of going through the training. And again, the system allows us to run them reports off really easily, and we can check in on that as a team to make sure that conversations are happening, as to where, you know, why somebody may take that forward, or why somebody, you know, won't be going forward with the request.
Yeah. Last time we spoke, we talked about different people being at different stages, or I don't know, different stages in their career or life or journey with the company, and yeah, perhaps they don't all need the same thing out of a performance management process. You've got obviously the business needs, which is that everybody understands what they should be doing and what the expectations are, and where they should be focusing their attention. But in terms of things like career progression and development plans and so on, can you tell me a little bit about how that might vary across different people, you know, maybe with some examples? And I think also you mentioned that you have an apprentice program as well, so I'd love to see how that fits into it as well, because I imagine the needs for different groups of people might be quite different.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why, one of the many reasons why we ended up with Appraised was we really liked the flexibility, because I've worked on systems in the past where you set a criteria and everybody has to do the same thing. And of course, there's certain metrics. So we have things like our behavioural competencies, and that's really important, because regardless of whether you're taking your first step as an apprentice or whether you're somebody who's very, very experienced, we expect everybody to behave in a way that matches our values and what's important to us as a business. But then there's a number of things that there's so much flexibility. So that the career progressions, one of them is not everybody wants career progression. Not everybody wants to do something different. There's a whole population in our business, in lots of businesses, where people are really enjoying the job that they're doing. They're doing a fantastic job, and that's their focus in the immediate. And I feel really strongly about somebody not being forced to put something into a box just because there's a box to be filled, because that just becomes a tick box exercise of you have to make something up and it's not real. And equally, it's saying to all that great population of people who are doing a fantastic job in the role that they're doing, it's saying they should look for something else, and we don't want them to look for anything else, because we want them to keep doing the fantastic job they're doing. Equally, people might have things that they're juggling in their home life and that it's not ready for doing anything else. Or we have people who, their next step is to step into, a future which is retirement, and, to ask somebody to complete what their progression is in them situations doesn't feel authentic. It feels like people would just put things in, and that's not what we want. We want people to be able to ask and describe what's important for them, or equally, just say that that's not for me this time round, maybe a time in the future, something different. And then the development areas, that's the same, that feeds into it. Not everybody, we have a number of sort of mandatory safety things on our sites, as you'd expect, but outside of that, again, not everybody is necessarily highlighting that they've got any development needs at the, whatever stage in their career. So the system allows us to really contextualize in certain areas. That allows people to say, I'm going to fill that in because I've got something to say, or I haven't got anything to say on that area, so I'm going to leave it. And again, I think that's important to people, that they don't feel like we're trying to put them in to boxes that fits the common few.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Because if you see those boxes and they're mandatory, and you think, I don't really want to put anything in here. I don't know what to say. You just sort of feel like you have to, or there's something wrong with you for not for not knowing what to say in there. I think that's right. I think in the past, online performance management systems or whatever processes that there have been, have suffered from that, because it's because of technological limitations, and it's a real shame to think that technology there in those cases have driven a sort of one-size-fits-all process, because it's just been technologically difficult to achieve personalization. So I like to think of Appraised as being something that allows personalization at scale. So you can have big organizations with many different groups doing slightly different things and using just the tools that are relevant and appropriate to them, and therefore they don't, they see it as a genuinely valuable, useful process, rather than just filling in a form.
And we've done that with the feedback as well, because again, feedback's it's a really challenging subject. The giving and receiving of feedback doesn't necessarily flow easily for everybody, and what we wanted to achieve from that is it wasn't about people getting quantity of feedback. It wasn't about getting feedback on a set criteria. It was about going out and saying who within the organization, or of course the system allows us to reach out externally, who would be able to give us some valuable feedback that would help me develop in my role. And what do I need to ask them? So because we've, it's a free form text, it allows us to say, actually, there's one person who I worked on a particular project with, and I'd really like to get some feedback as to how I did in the project, or, I'd like to get some feedback on how I conducted myself in meetings, because that's something that I really want to develop my skills in. And you can do that, and it's very personalised and context to you, rather than a list of things where you're saying, well, I didn't see you on that section, so it's not applicable, or I'll just give you something that I assume you'll be happy with.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fundamentally really help people. It might be nice, but it doesn't help people grow. And that's what we want to do, is we want to give people something useful that you can take away and say, that's interesting. That's really good feedback, and there's some things in there that I can do differently, I can develop, I can start doing, stop doing. That's going to help me better, be better placed in my job. And that's really what we want the system to support, in the conversations that it promotes.
Yep, fantastic. I'm going to take you back up to the senior level again, and I think people listening to this podcast, there will be many CPOs and HRDs out there who are not at the stage that you're at with your organization, where you've got an SLT who's bought into the process. They understand the importance of communicating, or the role that performance management can play in communicating and executing on the strategic objectives. And there will be HRDs out there who will be struggling perhaps to get the board to buy into performance management as an enabling process. They might just see it as a I don't know, bit of compliance or something like that. Any advice you would give to someone walking into that meeting?
Yeah, so I think some of it comes down to sharing information that perhaps resonates with people. So of course, as chief people officer, my background's all about people. I care passionately about people, and it's what I do day in, day out. In the same way, people in different roles have their speciality and what they care about. And sometimes it's about how you describe the value. So I certainly wouldn't be going into a senior meeting and saying it makes everybody feel good. Go,
Yep.
what does that isn't that nice? And that only lasts so long. But I firmly believe, and there's a huge amount of research out there that talks about employee engagement, and how engaged people stay with the organization longer, so that helps you with your retention. People who are highly engaged and motivated perform to a higher level. That helps you with your productivity. People who are motivated and feel part of a team, again, that's working together and producing on a team level. And there's a whole plethora of research and metrics that this buys into. So I think you can present this in a way that talks about how this isn't a warm and fuzzy process. For me, this is an essential part of doing business, because if you're a business that relies on people, and we are, and most organizations are, then it's important that we invest in those people, and we look at how we develop, we motivate, we engage, and all of the things. And the performance management's part of that. And if you're in a place of growth, which we are, then again, in order to grow your business, you're relying on the people who are working for you. You're relying on bringing people into the business, and increasingly, it's a two-way conversation in recruitment. In interviews, is we're interviewing a candidate, but they're interviewing us.
Yeah.
They want to know what we're like as a business, and they want to know what we care about. They want to know what opportunities are available. They want to know how we care about the environment and our sustainability and all of those things. And again, this is part of it. If we're not able to describe how we look after our people and how we develop them and how we go through the performance cycle, then there's a good chance that we're not going to be a standout employer, and that's what we want to be. Everybody wants to be the employer of choice, particularly when skills can be in shortage, and that's all part of it. So
Yep.
I think it's important that we describe that to the board, that we're saying, this just isn't about making people feel good. This is about real business metrics that feed into all of the things that are important. Because if we start to have high retention, that gives us issues with being able to deliver on our business goals. If we have people demotivated, we're perhaps not going to get the levels of productivity that we need. And if you talk about it like that, then it starts to gain interest with people.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us today and for telling us about your experience. And where can people find out more about you and the work you're doing at PX?
You can go into my LinkedIn.
Great.
I'm probably not as good at posting as I should be, but we are, that's one of my actions to get better at doing that. But we are an organisation where we can't stand still, and I've talked to you many times, Rory, about one of the reasons why we went with yourselves using the appraise system wasn't just for a system. The system's fantastic. It's very flexible. It allows us to do all of the things that you've mentioned. But equally, it's been part of a community of like-minded people that say staying the status quo is not good enough. We've got to keep evolving. We've got to think about how we get better at doing these things. And really what we want from a system is we want a very easy to use system that allows us to facilitate conversations, because the appraise system's fantastic, and I'm going to use the word but it is a system.
Yeah.
It's not a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think sometimes people, it's working through the appraise, it's not designed to share information in a typed form. It's about having a way to facilitate good conversations, and we'll keep doing more of that in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, our whole thing is about how really managers and their team members can get the best out of each other, and what we can do as a system to support those conversations and make sure that they're happening, they're productive and useful. But as you say, things change over time, and organizations evolve, and so the performance management process and the focus of that process will evolve as well. That's certainly something we've seen with PX over the years. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Really kind of you to share your thoughts. And thank you to everyone listening to this episode. To make sure you don't miss future episodes, please subscribe in your podcast app, where you can also catch up on episodes you might have missed. Thanks very much.